Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crixell Counseling's Hope Through the Journey podcast. Life is challenging, and we're here to help by providing hope through your journey of life. We'll help you create the life balance you want and deserve. We're talking about all things mental health and a whole lot more, so thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Alfred Crixell Jr., and I'm joined by my sister and fellow licensed professional counselor, Lettie Crixell. How you doing, Let? I'm pretty excited.
Hey, let me tell you, good morning to everyone, and yeah, I'm super excited to get started. I have a lot of other feelings gurgling up inside me right now too, but yes, excitement is definitely one of them. We want to help you create that balance in your life that will bring you that calm and peace we all deserve and need.
Absolutely. Love that. And I'm super excited to get started. You know, you and I talked about what we wanted this podcast to be about, and we went back and forth to find out what is it that our audience wanted and needed to know with regard to mental health. And the fact is that there are a lot of people, you know, they hear about mental health or they hear the words mental health and they view it as something you just don't talk about. Whether it was our upbringing or whatever, there seems to be this stigma about mental health. And so we wanted to kind of just break through that and talk about everything and anything that will help people understand that understand mental health in a really simple way and to learn really that it's okay to not be okay.
You know, I love that statement. It's okay to not be okay. I think that that's the starting point there. We tend to spend so much time thinking, what's wrong with me, or why can't I get it together? But the short answer is we aren't going to have it together all the time. And that is okay. Yeah. We are going to go through things. That's part of life. Mm-hmm. So let's take it one step at a time and start with learning how to take care of ourselves, because that is what's going to give us that balance to keep it going on a daily basis. That's right. It's what we call self-care.
Yes. And
yes, everywhere you look, it seems like self-care is the hot topic. Everybody's talking about it, or there are articles about it. Honestly, when Al and I were brainstorming topics for the podcast, my first reaction to this was, everybody's doing it. It's so overdone.
Right.
And I've heard from friends and clients, I don't have time for self-care. But as we begin talking about it, and as we were talking about it more and more, my wise brother said, and that is exactly why we need to continue the discussion. Right. Al, let's begin at the beginning. What is self-care?
Hey, glad you asked, right? No, serious. I think you're absolutely right. You know, and I think when you talk about self-care, the first thing you have to do is define it, right? I'm real big on definitions and making sure that everyone's on the same page with regard to, you know, what things mean. And so let's break that down a little bit and talk about what self-care is defined as. And a bunch of definitions out there. So I'm going to give you a couple here, you know, and I before this, you know, I looked at some of the definitions of self-care, and the American Psychological Association, right, APA, they define self-care as, and I'm going to read here, their quote here, what it is they say self-care is, quote, providing adequate attention to one's own physical and psychological wellness. Right, let's let that sink in a little bit. All right, so what's your reaction to that?
Well, what pops out to me is providing adequate attention to one's own wellness. How many of us understand how important it is to take time to care for ourselves, not just for our physical well-being, but our emotional well-being as well?
Yeah, and the really interesting part about what APA says is that it even goes so far as to call self-care an ethical imperative for mental health professionals. That's right. You know, you and me, Led, that's on us, right? So I think it's important to let everyone know what we do ourselves for self-care. And we'll get to that later on in the podcast. But let's take a look at another definition. This one from the National Institute of Health. They define self-care as, and again, I'm quoting here, a person's attempts to provide optimal health, prevent illness, detect symptoms at an early date, and manage chronic illness. Right? So if we kind of mesh those two definitions together, right, from NIH and APA, then self-care simply means being good to yourself and respecting your body to provide both physical and mental health balance. I like how simple that is. What do you think? Would you agree with that, Let?
I completely agree. And now, by agreeing, that doesn't always mean that we do it.
Right.
Because I think about, where you said you read in the definition about detecting symptoms at an early date. I mean, automatically I thought, how many times have I canceled or postponed doctor's appointments because, I've got to do this, or I have this, that job to do, or that deadline. We need to really take that pause for ourselves, and take care of ourselves.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. I totally agree. And so once we define self-care, and I know that when I do this with clients or individuals who I'm working with, once I say what it is, the first question that comes out is, okay, so why is it so important, right? So what do you tell them when they say, okay, so why should I do this? Why is it so important? What's the big deal with self-care?
Yeah, I get that question all the time. And always what comes next is, I don't have time for self-care, like we said earlier. And I get it. We feel like we're already feeling overwhelmed with everything we're doing, with the schedules that we have. We can't even imagine adding one more thing to the schedule.
Truth.
But here's the thing that I share with clients. There is always going to be something we have to do or someone we need to take care of. And if we want to be any good for others, we need to realize that we have to prioritize our own self-care first.
Yes, absolutely.
As a matter of fact, engaging in a self-care routine has been clinically proven to reduce or eliminate anxiety, stress, frustration, resentment, and so many other things. It can also improve our concentration and energy, as well as increase happiness. And who doesn't want more happiness in their lives? Am I right?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
And from a physical perspective, self-care has been proven to reduce heart disease and stroke. We're talking about our quality of life here.
Yeah. So no brainer here, right? Well, why is it important? Oh my gosh. And again, it goes to the idea of not only does it benefit mental health, but it benefits your physical health as well. And I think people don't realize how they are intertwined that way. And so, yeah, another kind of no-brainer reason why we should do this. One of the first things that I talk about with individuals when we talk about self-care is, what does it look like, right? What do you do? What is self-care? Like, how do you do it? And the first 3 things that I tell people, I call these the big 3 with regard to self-care, and it's this: nutrition, exercise, and sleep. What do I mean by that? I mean, our body really needs these 3 things in order to function properly. Yet so many people, so many of us we take these things for granted, and we don't see the impact that they have in our lives. So let's break it down a little bit more here. First, nutrition. And here, I mean, what are you feeding yourself? Everybody's heard, like, you are what you eat, right? So, but are you eating healthy or are you not? And I get it. It's harder to eat healthy than it is to eat junk food. But your body takes the hit when you don't eat right. I mean, yeah, it's even more expensive to eat healthy. I mean, you go to the grocery store and you got to buy, healthy food, and you spend a lot more than if you just went to a Whataburger and got a $7.99 combo or something. I mean, I think it's higher than that. But anyway, you know what I mean? So we got to understand what we're eating because it impacts our self-care. And unhealthy eating impacts your emotional and physical state as well. So take a look at what you're eating, right? All right, second, exercise.
Ooh,
oh yeah,
big
I know.
one.
I know. Everybody
Big
everybody just turned off the podcast, right? No, please don't. Please
Including
don't.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Please don't. No, exercise. This is important. And I'm just talking about moving here. I'm not talking about competing for Mr. or Miss Fitness or anything. I mean, if you're doing that, that's fine. I'm not,
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, but remember, too much of anything can be at the expense of your physical and mental balance. So really, what we're talking about here is just getting back to just basic exercise, right? And there's so many things you can do for exercise. Take a walk around your neighborhood. Open the door and just walk around the neighborhood. Close your rings on your iPhone. I mean,
that's
just
been my goal.
Something, right? It can be a workout. It can be a jog down at the local track or park or whatever. I mean, just really anything to get you moving. But you got to do it. You've got to do it. It is necessary. So just keep that in mind. All right. All right, next, and oh my goodness, this is so critical. I'm talking here about sleep.
That's
All
my
right.
favorite one right now.
Yeah, sleep. Your body needs it. An adequate amount of sleep. An adequate amount of sleep, right? Not 2 hours, not 3 hours. As adults, we should be getting, 6, 7, hours of sleep at least, right? And this is what the body needs in order to function. The research shows the benefits of quality sleep. And if you're sleep deprived, your body's going to let you know it. People think like, oh, I don't need sleep. I don't need sleep. But you do. And if you want to function properly, again, mentally, you got to get your sleep. What are you thinking, Let?
I agree with everything that you're saying, and I'm sure our listeners are saying, you know what? It's true. Yeah. I need a better diet. I need, the right kind of foods. I need to exercise. I need to get moving, and I need my sleep. But here's the thing, and it's not easy. It's not easy. I think what jumps out at me in the big three right now is sleep.
Yeah.
Or lack of. Mm-hmm. I go through periods of not getting enough sleep, and my mind and body really do feel it. I mean, if you aren't well rested, it can interfere with daily life. It's difficult to focus, difficult to follow through, and then there's also a sluggishness in my day. I feel it. And if I'm sluggish, then I have no energy to exercise or do anything else for that matter.
Exactly. And you're not good for anybody else, right? If you're lacking in any of these three areas, you can't help. I mean, it makes it really more difficult, and really you do a disservice to people because you can't help, especially in our situation, right? I mean, we really have to do this because we have to be able to serve and to help others. And if we're not ourselves mentally and physically sound, then it's going to impact the help that we give. And all right, so again, those three fundamental things when it comes to self-care are sleep, exercise, and nutrition. So even before you do anything else, check those three things in your life, because I guarantee you, if you just change those things in a positive way, you're going to see the difference, and your body's going to see the difference as well. Okay, so another thing you can do, and there's so many different areas of your life where you can, just practice self-care. And one of the things I can think about is just socially. I'm talking about, your social life and just talking to friends. That's a good activity. It's a good social self-care activity. Or being part of a book club. You were part of a book club one time?
I was. Several years ago, I was part of a book club, and we would meet, decide on a book and meet once a month and have that discussion. But I tell you, it's the interaction with people, just being able to exchange ideas and spend some quality time with others.
Right. I know a lot of people that are involved in book clubs, and it's that social thing. It's good for people. People like to read and they socialize, and it's a feel-good. It's a feel-good thing. Another thing that people do a lot of or tend to do is they take up a hobby. And I really love this idea of hobbies, because this is where you can really get creative, doing what you like to do. I know for me, and you know this, I'm a singer. I've been singing since I was a kid. And I mean, I still remember thinking about this, right? I still remember when we were growing up, I remember sitting, in my room, or in our room, because, my brother and I shared a room. But I remember sitting in our room, and I had this little red transistor radio. And I remember it, and I remember I would sit and listen to Casey Kasem's Weekly Top 40 and sing along with all the songs, But little did I realize then that I was practicing self-care back then. And because it gave me that just feeling good, that feel-good feeling. And I would finish, and I would listen to music, and I would just be ready. I'd be ready to take on the world, and I'd go out and, do what I needed to do. But I mentioned that because over the last couple of years, I started singing again and listening to music and reminding myself that that's what made me feel good. That's what gives me peace. That's what helps me. And so listening to those songs, and especially those songs that you listen to that remind you of a good time in your life, those ones that take you back.
Exactly.
I love that. I love this. I could be sitting in the car and just listen. A song pops in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember that song, right? But the point I'm trying to make here is that hobbies give you an opportunity to really explore and discover yourself and really learn what makes you feel good. And this is where it becomes a really personal thing, and it'll be different for everybody, right? I mean, Let, what do you,
Absolutely.
what's yours?
Al, before I do continue, you may want to let the audience know who Casey Kasem
Casey
is,
Kasem.
because while I was right there on a Sunday afternoon as well in my own room with my sister, others may not have heard of him. Just saying.
Yeah. So anyway, well, okay. Just for those of you that don't know who Casey Kasem, and you can Google it, right? You can Google Casey Kasem. But
Sure.
Casey Kasem was the host of the famous weekly Top 40, and it just you heard Casey every Sunday. You listen to 12 o'clock, I think it would come out, or I don't remember anymore, but I remember hitting it in the voice, right? Casey Kasem,
yes.
the weekly Top 40. They're like, yeah, it's time. So anyway, that's who Casey Kasem is.
Thank you for explaining that. Yes. I remember every summer. Well, my first self-care activity was reading. I remember every summer, Dad would take all four of us to the library to check out books. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
I looked forward to that every week. My favorite, that's how I got introduced to Nancy Drew mysteries. Those were my favorite. The Hidden Staircase, The Clue in the Diary, which then led me to writing in a diary.
Oh.
Yes.
Nice.
After reading that, I was like,
Well,
I
there you
want
go.
a diary.
That's-
So I got my little notebook and started writing. And I still do that on and off to this day, but I call it a journal now because I'm an adult.
Well, yeah, and
So.
kids do journals.
Yeah,
I mean, kids do diaries. Adults do adult journals. But yeah, I remember as you were talking about it right now. So that's right. I remember, and you said Nancy Drew. I remember the Hardy Boys.
Yes. Those are the big two, Hardy
The-
Boys and Nancy Drew.
right?
Yes.
And the Hardy Boys. I remember,
Uh-huh.
who had the collection? I remember the collection. Did Dad have the collection of Hardy Boys books?
I don't remember.
I remember
well, it had
a
to be you guys.
Maybe we
well,
had it at our
didn't
house.
have to be, but
Because we had because there was a library at our house, I think. Or
yes,
something, where
yes.
there was just
He
books.
had in his office. He had an office, and there was a bookshelf.
And we'll have to refer to.
We'll have
This
to
is
ask we'll have to ask one of our other siblings
Yeah.
who has the best memory
Yes.
ever.
Yes. Yes. You know who you are. Anyway, yeah, you absolutely. I was thinking as you were talking about that too. I remember that. And it was such a cool time. It was fun. As a matter of fact, I have a 6-year-old boy, and I'm getting him, we go to the library. And I go with him. I say, hey, well, let's go to the library and go look at the books and let's check out some books. And we do that. And I think I remember that time when Dad would take us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I do that now for my little boy. And as a matter of fact, we have a couple of books we got to take back because they're overdue. But anyway, but no, we again, self-care activity, right? Self-care activity. And it doesn't stop there, right? There are tons more other self-care activities you can do. One of the things that it helps a lot of people when it comes to self-care is our mindfulness activities, like purposeful breathing and meditation. And I love these, right? I try to do these as much as I can. A breathing meditation, right? Just a simple breathing meditation. It could be a couple of minutes long. Is a great way to practice that mindfulness. If you want to get more involved, you can do like guided meditations and visual imagery, guided imagery, and all kinds of other stuff. And you can find them on YouTube and apps on your cell phone. Two of the ones that I'm familiar with are Calm and Insight Timer. And I know we've talked about that, and we've actually recommended and suggested to our clients to kind of look at that. So some of the things I can think of, you can look for more. But yeah, mindfulness. And I think that's another topic for another podcast, because that's a whole big topic in and of itself. So
Yeah, it is. And I was just gonna mention that when we, with mindfulness, it can seem awkward when you first do it, uncomfortable.
yeah.
But then be aware that it's uncomfortable, maybe because we're not used to it. We're not used to shutting down for a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
And we just, to focus on just nothing and just trying to find that calm.
Yeah.
And it is uncomfortable when if you're not used to it. So, but I will say, like on these apps, they have different, they've got 1 minute meditations, 2 minute, it builds up. So you don't have to, sit for 30 minutes and, you can build up. Just try it.
Yeah, and the other thing about meditation is that when people hear the word meditation, they think about, sitting cross-legged on the floor, doing ohms,
Exactly.
all that kind of stuff. We're not talking about that right now.
Not right now, which there is that. And, but again, to start with, start simple. It's baby steps.
Yeah. Moving to another form of self-care is going to church. temple, the spirituality part of it, right? Synagogues or places, that offer peace for many. That's an important part for a lot of people, the spirituality. And it can be many things to many people. For example, in Alcoholics Anonymous and AA, they do the 12 steps program there. One of the things they talk about in the 12 steps is they talk about spirituality as a higher power. Mm-hmm. So practicing your spirituality can be helpful, right? Whatever that higher power is for you. Another thing that we don't talk about much when it comes to self-care, but it absolutely is an important part of self-care, is this concept of showing compassion towards others and expressing gratitude for what we have and what we receive. And I think these are kind of like wild cards, right? You don't know. I don't think anybody, if I asked you what self-care is, I don't think a lot of people would say compassion and gratitude. And so I want to dive a little bit into this a little bit because, first of all, they don't cost anything. But when we show someone compassion, when we show someone that we care about them, it not only helps the other person, but it also has this boomerang effect on us. In other words, we receive a similar amount of happiness and satisfaction from helping as the individual being helped. This is actually research-based too. This is something I'm not making up. This is true. Studies have shown that when you give, you receive in the same amount, right? I mean, you receive the same kind of feel good as the person you help. So really an amazing thing if you think about it. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting because how you talk about that boomerang effect. And because the thing is, when you're showing someone compassion, I don't think you're thinking, oh, I'm going to do this because you're just there for someone else in a moment.
Yeah.
And showing compassion isn't a difficult thing to do.
No.
I mean, just offering to help someone, words of encouragement or support. It's acknowledging, validating another person. It can make such a big impact on them. And like you were saying, on us too.
Yeah.
I know that I shared with you that a couple of weeks ago, I was at the grocery store and I was trying to get a cart, those infamous carts that are right at the front doors that people, everybody's waiting to get one.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed there was a man with his young son getting their cart first, and they were having trouble. He was having trouble getting it. And so I was on the other side, and I pulled the cart out, and it came out fairly easily. And I just offered it to him because I thought, he's been waiting there trying to get it. He has a kid. And so I gave it to him, and, he thanked me. And so I just went on my way getting another cart. In the meantime, another man had come over, and he was also trying to get a cart. But both of our carts were stuck. 2 different rows, but they were both stuck. And then I noticed as we were trying to pull them out, we were joking and talking, but I turned and I noticed that the father with his son, were still there with their cart waiting. And he was like waiting to offer it back to me. And then he came over and helped us. So, it made me, afterwards, I walked in and I was like, I had this little interaction that wasn't planned.
Right.
It wasn't. But what felt good was that, it's one of those pay it forward kind of things. It just felt good that in that moment, we were all there kind of helping each other. And once everyone got their cart, then we all went into the store. It was one of those things. And it's like I said, you may never know the difference that you make, but you do have an impact.
Yeah. And think about the feel good that they got. You got your feel good, but they got their feel good too because they helped, and that's an amazing thing. It's so awesome. Also, let's not forget the power of gratitude.
Absolutely.
This is another one that really doesn't get talked about much when you talk about self-care. But again, being thankful and gracious for what we have. I mean, so many people, they're looking at their social media feeds and they're looking at what other people have and they want what other people have. And they're, why can't I have this? And I want that. And they have that. And I want it too. And the problem with that is that game never ends. That game of wanting more, it just never ends, and when you have what you have, you're always going to want something more. And so you're chasing the next best thing and you won't win. You don't win that game. As a matter of fact, you'll lose, physically and emotionally. So the answer to that is to kind of dial that down a notch, right? I mean, be content and thankful and grateful for what we do have. Be at peace with your blessings, and you'll find that you'll be at peace with yourself. again, the cool thing about self-care is that you get to choose what works for you. And you get to discover yourself and discover what works for you. But then the big thing here is you have to commit to do it, right?
The commitment. Exactly. Look, there's always going to be something to do. The job, the groceries to buy, the kids to drive back and forth from whatever activities they're participating in, meals to plan and cook, and the list goes on and on and on. We have to make that conscious effort to take time to pause from our regularly scheduled programming and do something that is only for us. Mm-hmm. Because if you're anything like me, yes, I admit it, it was the last thing added on my things to do today list. Yeah. And the first thing to be removed because I didn't get to it. There wasn't enough time.
Right.
And I think there's some guilt that comes with thinking about self-care, especially if you're someone who is used to giving everybody else or everything else priority.
Yeah.
You know, the problem is we don't prioritize ourselves, right? Yeah. I mean, let's think about that for a moment.
Yeah, and I think it's just systemic, right? I mean, we never think about ourselves. But when do we learn that? If you've ever flown on an airplane, the attendants are doing the instructions or giving the
what to do if
loss of cabin pressure or whatever. They will say the oxygen mask is going to fall down, and they'll go, if you're sitting next to a child, they'll come to you and they'll say like, okay, so if it falls down, put the oxygen mask on yourself first and then place it on your child. And I think that's so true. I mean, we need to hear that over and over and over again because, again, it goes to the whole idea of why we do self-care. We cannot help others if we don't help ourselves. We cannot be our best unless we help ourselves first. And that goes to what you're saying. We have just lived with helping others, or everyone else needs my attention. Right. And then we wonder, like, well, what about me? Right. And I hear a lot of people say, like, there's nothing left for me. Well, there's nothing left for you because you don't give yourself first, because they think it's selfish. They think it's like, oh, that's bad of me to want to do something for myself first.
Correct.
That's a shift that has to happen in the way we think. I mean, we've got to start changing that to say, like, wait a minute, I got to take care of me first, then I can do a better job taking care of somebody else.
Exactly. You know, and it goes back to giving yourself permission to pause.
Right.
It's not selfish to take time to take care of yourself and make your well-being a priority. Mm-hmm. You owe it to yourself and to everyone else around you to allow yourself to relieve the pressures of everyday life by giving yourself the opportunity to reset or recharge. Yeah. You know, it's baby steps. I tell my clients, okay, you don't have to do 10 things. You don't have to do 5 things. Yeah. You know, and you don't have to sit in whatever the self-care is for long periods of time, especially if you're new to the idea of self-care. Yeah. Even if it's only 5-minute increments throughout the day, like deep breathing, body stretches, start somewhere, right. You know. In the mornings, honestly, getting back to mentioned earlier about gratitude, in the mornings, I make it a point, I wake up in the morning and the first thing I try to do is think of at least three, if not more, things that I'm grateful for.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
And it changes the mood. It's easier to get out of bed, it's so for maximum impact, self-care must be done intentionally and consistently.
100% agree.
Even if it's just 5-minute increments.
100%. Consistency is the name of the game with self-care or with anything, really. Speaking of consistency, and it's interesting, I saw a recent study. It was Forbes magazine. They did a study on New Year's resolutions. You know those New Year's resolutions, right?
I'm sure love those. I don't make them anymore.
No. And there's a reason, right? I mean, but it's a thing, right? It's a thing, like New Year's resolutions. Okay, so this year I'm going to be the new me, and and all these goals come out, right? Whether it's weight goals or
exactly,
I don't know, podcast goals. I don't know.
I'm more about vision boards these days, but yeah.
That works too.
Yeah.
That works too. But anyway, the study that they did found that 80%, almost 80% of people admitted to abandoning their New Year's resolution by February of the following year. That's like 2 months after you've made the thing and you're done.
Yeah.
Almost 80%. So New Year's resolutions, not very successful. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's no consistency, right? There's no purpose. You start out strong and then it goes away. And so if you're going to practice self-care and make it a priority, it's got to be purposeful. And the thing is, the motivation that you should have for self-care is all the benefits that you get from it, like we talked about earlier. The other thing we want to do here is leave you with some helpful tips to help you stay on track, because consistency, we talked about consistency. Okay, so how do you stay consistent? The first thing you want to do to kind of motivate yourself or to stay consistent is to think about your why. And I got that from author and inspirational speaker Simon Sinek. He talks about this in his best-selling book, Start With Why. And if you're looking for a good read, check that one out. But if you can understand your why, if you can understand why you do something, it will motivate you to do it and to continue to do it well, right? Why do I want to do this? What is my motivation to do this? Why? What is my why? And so your answer to this question will play a big part in whether you follow through or not. Another tip is what I call the trio. You say it out loud, write it down, and schedule it. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but once you put it out there, right? You put it out there, you're more inclined to follow through. You've said it out loud to friends, family, and now you're basically like, okay, I said it, so I got to do it, right? Because they're going to ask you about it, right? So how's that coming along, So you want to be able to follow through. And so I'm serious here. Yeah, you got to place whatever self-care activity you've chosen, put it on your calendar and do it. Whether that's exercising and whether that's walking, whether that's gardening, whether that's playing golf. Yeah, that's me. Anyway, I want to get that going, right? I want to add that to my self-care. But whatever that activity, that self-care activity is for you, and we talked about them at the very beginning of this podcast, but put it on your calendar and do it.
Most definitely. Let me tell you, when you had me at say it out loud, write it down, and schedule it. Much like this podcast that we're doing today,
Absolutely.
We started talking about it, and I was like, okay, let's do it. But it wasn't until I just decided, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do the research. I told a couple of friends, I'm getting ready to do a podcast. And it was just because I told myself, if I say it out loud, I have to do it.
There you go.
And sure enough, we are here right now.
Yes, we are.
Putting this together. Other ways that I set reminders for myself. Alexa and I hope I didn't get her started right now, but constantly I'll put reminders. Remind me to do this. Remind me to do that. My watch is a constant reminder because my watch keeps me accountable. Time to stand up. When was the last time you stood up? All those kind of things. So again, it's about closing those rings on my watch for me. I just have just certain ways, just certain things. And again, putting it on the calendar, making sure it gets done.
You said a word that is another tip. You said accountability, right? It said it keeps you accountable.
Right.
You said that your watch keeps you accountable.
Right.
So here's another tip. Find an accountability partner. Find someone that will motivate you and help you along the way. Maybe they even join in with you. Maybe they're going to the gym with you, or doing the workout, or walking around having that Wednesday morning or whatever, Tuesday afternoon walk or jog or whatever it is. Accountability partners are so helpful, so helpful. Last tip I think we want to leave with you today is building a habit. Build the habit of whatever the self-care activity you've chosen is. Make it a habit. A lot of us set goals. We talked about the New Year's resolutions, right? We set goals. And we want to make sure we set attainable goals, first of all. Because if we set the goal too high, the bar too high, then we'll never get there. So we want to set attainable goals. And attainable goals are good. Don't get me wrong. They're fine. And they can be very satisfying. But if we want to continue to have that lifestyle, then we really need to look at habit building. James Clear, I read a book, Atomic Habits. Author James Clear, great book. Another plug for another book here. If you haven't read it, it is a great read. In it, he talks about, or he states that it's better to create an idea or habit of being a person who XYZ. So if I'm trying to lose 20 pounds, I can say not my goal. My goal is to lose 20 pounds, because what happens if I get to 20 pounds and then what? What do I do then?
What's next?
So yeah, what's next? And so then we get stuck. We get stuck in that. What James Clear is talking about in his book, he says, build a habit of being the person who is fit, or I want to be the person who eats. I'm a person who eats healthy. I'm a person who is fit. And if we go along life with that in our mind, saying that, then when we go to that restaurant, then we're thinking, I'm a person who eats healthy, and I'm looking at the healthy options on that menu, right? Or if I'm a person who is fit, then I'm going to do something every day that's going to continue on with me being that fit person. Again, the reason that we want to do this is because goals are good. I mean, don't get me wrong, meeting goals are great. However, what tends to happen when a goal is met, like I said earlier, is the question then becomes, well, now what? What happens then is most people basically tend to go back to their old ways or their old habits, and those are usually not very good. So to combat that, I just simply remind myself that I'm a person that eats healthy, or I'm a person that's fit. So even on those days when I can't get a workout in, or I can't get my exercise in, I still might do like 3 push-ups or 3 jumping jacks or anything to continue and to keep moving forward, in that area. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, and with all those little tips and strategies. And I will say that there are going to be setbacks. Again, saying it to yourself, I am going to eat healthy. Today I'm going to eat healthy. Except I'm going to go ahead and get those Les Limon chips because I feel like it, and I will not be shamed for eating the Les Limon chips.
Yes. Yes, agreed.
I mean, there's going to be those times, and
agreed.
That's okay. Mm-hmm. Then that's the good thing is you can start again. You're going to have times that are slip ups.
Yeah.
Because again, life happens.
Yeah.
But then you just remind yourself, I'm going to eat healthy at dinner. I'm going to have a healthy lunch. Again, baby steps. And be kind to yourself. In developing these self-care routines, you need to remember to be kind to yourself.
Yeah, be gracious.
Yes.
Give yourself some grace.
That's right.
Give yourself some grace in the process.
That's right. Don't be harsh on yourself. You're doing the best that you can.
Yeah, agreed. Well, we covered a bunch over the course of our time here, and the bottom line is this: self-care is a necessary part of life. And so you now have the information and tools you need to start today, right? When's the best time to start? Today. So start to be creative, discover yourself, and start practicing self-care. Start small. Start small. Take one activity and just see how it goes. And then if that one doesn't work, try something else. And if that one doesn't work, try something else. Just keep on. Because it's too important. It's too important not to.
Do the research.
Do the research. So love yourself. And doing that is going to help your mental health tremendously, right?
Exactly. That's right.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. If you like what you heard and want to share it with your friends, please do so. The Hope Through the Journey podcast will be up on our website at CrixellCounseling.com. Don't forget, if you'd like to subscribe to our newsletter and other extras, you can subscribe on our website as well. Again, that's CrixellCounseling.com. And we want to hear what you want to learn more about. So if you have any suggestions for upcoming podcasts, please let us know. You can check out our Instagram also at, mine is CrixellJr.Alfred. Where can people find you on IG?
And mine is Anna Crixell. That's one N. Anna Crixell. Simple and to the point. Go follow us right now. We are a work in progress.
There we go. All right. It's been a lot of fun doing this. Thank you for your insight as always. And looking forward to our next one.
Right back at you, Al. Already brainstorming ideas.
All right, good people. Life is a journey. Thank you again for allowing us to share a little piece of our life with you. Remember, you are not alone. We are in this together. We got this. Talk soon, everybody.